Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of APB. So in this episode, we basically have a situation where there was a robbery that took place, and a retired cop ended up dying in this whole heist situation. And it turns out that this person has a past connection with Murphy because he's the one that trained her, kind of took her underneath his wing. So for Murphy, this case is very important to her. Like, she's kind of going full steam ahead in this, which Gideon can obviously get behind because it's the main reason why he did what he's done now, taking over the 13th precinct and everything. Obviously, it became more than that, and he knew it at the time that it would become more than just the whole Sully situation, but he can understand more so than anyone, like, being motivated by someone losing someone as a reason to kind of get into a case. Basically, they ended up catching one of the guys. His name is Jake, but there's like 4 or 5 other guys that got away from the whole situation, and it starts bringing up the question, okay, this got to be something more, because it's like they only stole like $8,000 worth of jewelry, so it's like, why go through all that for just a little take, and why risk it and everything? And it turns out, basically, there's a bigger plot here. But I mean, what I like the most, like, obviously, that's the bigger plot is the fact is of figuring out this whole situation. Obviously, the whole thing turned out to be a trial run for a real heist. But what I really appreciate is, like, you know, obviously putting his technology to the test. Gideon, you know, obviously there's a whole interrogation technique, but Jake's not giving any sway. He's not giving any answers. And there's no evidence to kind of put him in that. Like, obviously, he's like, yo, he ran away from the cops and everything, but he could argue at the same time. It's like, oh, he heard the gunshots and everything. He got scared and ran, and he was like, oh, I ran from the police because the fact is that I've heard all the things. Oh, I didn't want to be, you know, someone that the police gunned down or something like that. So it's like, obviously none of the cameras could point him at exactly being around that area, so they had no evidence. Yes, he, you know, it's like, oh, you could get him for, like, you know, obstructing justice, sure, but that's as much as you can go. There's no, like, hard evidence saying linking him to the crime and everything. So Gideon gets something that basically his company's been developing. It's essentially a chair. It's meant for astronauts as a means of kind of checking their biometrics, kind of checking, making sure that they're okay. And essentially, he kind of uses it almost like a lie detector. Basically, it checks the dude's pulse, and every time that, you know, Murphy says something, or well, basically they had Brandt and Goss driving around town. Basically, they put up 3 large screens in the interrogation room and basically show him around, like, obviously the neighborhood that they're like, oh, whoa, this sparked something for him. Obviously, he kind of spiked a little bit. He got a little nervous when we mentioned this particular neighborhood that he's connected to. And the whole point was to kind of read his vitals and determine, like, what was real and what, like, you know, what would kind of pique his interest. Obviously, Murphy saying key things, obviously trying to figure it all out. They got him pretty good. Like, it was pretty, like, wow, that was like, I mean, because at the same time in the back of your head, you're like, legally, can they do that? I mean, I'm sure from a legal standpoint, you can't, I mean, I'm sure that's the whole reason why the whole situation is coming up, but I'll get to that in a second. It's like, man, I'm sure there would be some heavy legal, like, ramifications for doing what they're doing. It's like, they're not breaking any laws, because really they're just reading his biometrics, so it's not like, you know, I mean, it'd be the same thing as, like, reading someone's mind. I mean, you know, like, how do you really judge for that? There's no precedent set for it, like, especially this particular circumstance. So it's like, how do you really determine whether that's legal or not? Because it's like, oh, you're reading his biometrics without his consent or something. You know, I mean, would it be any, I mean, like I said, it's just a very interesting area that I'm sure that's going to definitely come up, but I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit later. But, it turns out that this was all about an armored car heist, and they're trying to stop it. But basically, they were all located in their own direction, and the only person that was there that was in, I mean, well, first I got to go back, talk about something else real quickly. It's the whole forensic, like, they have, like, a forensic team on the go. Basically, Pete and his people kind of run one. Basically, it would take days, like a week or something, for forensics to get all the information they need from that place, because basically they were building explosives and stuff like that. But it's like they don't have that much time because the heist is going down that day, and it's like with the way the detonator and stuff that they're using, that it will kill the people inside. And it's like, for Murphy, it's like, no, that's unacceptable. We've already lost one person today. We can't let this kill other people too. But then, like, Pete, you know, helped out and everything. Like I said, the whole forensic team, so they were able to piece things together. And it's like, oh, they're working with explosives. Look at this map. They were touching it with explosives all over their hands, which you have Murphy kissing Peter on the cheek, like, oh my god, thank you, did such a good job. And you have Gideon be like, yeah, but I'm the one that put this whole team together. And Pete's like, man, I love police work. You almost see Gideon get a little jealous, because that's kind of a certain thing that kind of got brought up. It's like, oh, is there something between him and Murphy? It's not even like that. It's like, oh, you congratulate me. It's like my money and my smarts is kind of bringing this whole thing okay, never mind. But basically, Murphy had to deal with the situation on her own, but then it didn't necessarily work out that way. Well, is what I'm going for. Sorry, my brain kind of stopped for a second. She was the only cop nearby, and it's like they had to stop them before they set off the explosives. The explosives went off, and obviously it doesn't seem like anyone was killed, but someone could have been, which I'll kind of work my way around because I got to tie some stuff together. Obviously, another part of this episode was Ida kind of stepping out of like her like obviously she's not just a side character like doing like, oh, working with Gideon. Like she had her own story this episode, because there's that boy in the episode 1 that Brant and Goss responded to, because basically there's a whole domestic abuse situation with his mom and dad because his dad's getting all handsy on his mom. Well, it turns out, like, basically, she's done some she ran some numbers, and basically, statistically, it's shown that basically, if left unchecked, he could basically end up killing, like, his wife or his son, just because, you know, he's likely to do it just because it's a constant thing. Like, this is based on all the data that the fact is that there's always something associated with them, like his wife ending up in a hospital and stuff like that, so Gideon's like, there's not much we can do. This isn't police work, because it's a situation of, like, the sad thing is when it comes to police, you can't necessarily be proactive with that type of situation. You can be on the lookout, but you can't really interfere in that particular situation, because it's like, that's a maybe situation. You can't act on it like, this is what this person could have done, unless evidence show that, like, oh, they were planning something ahead of time. But with what she's saying, it's likely that he could do something from a domestic point of view, but it's not like it's a planned situation. If it was something planned, it'd be very different. But the fact of the matter is, with a domestic situation like that, it'd be a spot on the moment. Just something pisses him off, he triggered and hits his son or his wife. And it's like, you can't really legally do anything from that point of view. But Ada doesn't like that answer, because it turns out Ada had a very similar situation. It's something she ended up bringing up to the dude's wife later on, because she's like, I didn't ask you to get involved in stuff. But the son's like, no, mom, she's trying to help. The mom didn't appreciate it, but the son did, because it's like, because his dad got arrested in the first episode, but he got released like 2 days later. It's like, it didn't change anything. If anything else, it made it worse. And that's kind of what she's bringing up. The fact is, like, I get you want to help us and everything, but the fact of the matter is, all you're just going to do is make it worse, because he's going to be even more aggravated and agitated. He's going to take it out on them. But for Ida, it's like, she knows from personal experience, because her dad did that to her. She ended up in foster care and everything, and she didn't want the same thing to happen to that little boy. It's not right, and it's not fair for his mom to go through that, him or his mom to go through that. Like, no, you know, for him to be drunk or just pissed off or whatever and hit them like that. So she was trying her best. I mean, as she got him good, basically she contacts some dude from her past named DVA or something like that. And basically, he's willing to help her out. She's basically like, yo, take this guy down digitally, basically shut down a lot of stuff connected to him. But in this particular case, his credit card and everything. And she basically stages a scene where she agitates him. It's like, oh, you like hitting, oh, you only want to fight when it's like a woman or a child. Like, you like hitting people like your son and your wife, and she gets hit. But prior to that, she hit the APB app and gets him arrested. Like, she set him up hard, and she played up the whole victim card. Oh my God, he hit me. I was trying to stop him, and, you know. So the point I'm trying to tie this all together is the fact is that obviously the bomb went off, exploded quickly like that, because like I said, Agent Cecile kind of messed me up, so I'm constantly bouncing back and forth between the two. She got in contact with that dude, and he was like, okay, you're going to owe me another favor, and he called the phone and blew it up. I think what bothers her most is because it, you know, she kind of wanted a situation where it's like, hey, could you call this number to kind of, one of two things. Either it's like she was hoping that he'd call it so that he could interfere with it, and she didn't know he was going to call it and make it explode. That, or it's because she's like, it made her realize, like, if anything had gone wrong, like if they were close or anything, she could have been held responsible. She could have actually killed someone, like, or someone could have died because of that explosion. Even the bad guys didn't. I mean, to our knowledge, it didn't pop up that anyone had died, but it's still a situation where people could have died. So I think that was kind of messing with her head, because at the end, she's looking at the explosion over and over again. And Gideon really looks at it like, okay, he knows something's up, because he saw her whole lip situation, but she's like, oh, it's not police business. So, like I said, it's a situation where Ada is taking things into her own hands. Like, obviously, there's give and take. But the reason I'm bringing this up because the whole Scott situation, the whole task force situation, the moment like she wanted to kind of do things her own way, I was like, that's going to come back to bite them in the ass some shape or form, because obviously this dude, DVA or whatever his name is someone that she does not want to talk to. She only goes to him as a last resort, because it's like she can't go to the police about this whole situation, even though she's technically working with them, because she knows they can't really act on anything until something happens. Because even Brandon and Goss were only able to do something because he attacked her. But probably the reason why things didn't work out that last time is probably because, like, in that situation, he probably apologized to his wife and everything. It's like, oh, it'll never happen again. And she was like, she didn't want to cause more problems for herself. And she's like, no, he had time to, sit in jail. And so think about what he did, so it won't be like that again. So, I mean, that's how those type of things sadly work out. At the very least can work out. I'm not saying they always work out like that, but it's a possibility. It's a very sad possibility. So, but the point is, like, the reason I'm bringing this up is because obviously, like I said, he's not someone that she probably likes. Who's to say what kind of things he'll ask of her? Because now, not only does she owe him a favor, she actually owes him 2 favors now. But the fact of the matter is, if this gets back to the whole task force about the way she handled things, like the fact is she's a civilian, quote unquote civilian, handling things, trying to bring justice into her own head, going all vigilante, bringing in maybe a well-known criminal, because maybe he's a hacker criminal, which seems like that might be his whole situation. Like I said, so it doesn't seem like he's necessarily a good guy. So on that front, it's also about, because they're already under a lot of scrutiny, because the mayor and the task force that he's creating, Scott's behind it, all, not necessarily he's behind it, but he's a big part of it, kind of wants to take this, this whole shut down, this whole District 13 situation with Gideon. So if this gets brought up, it could look bad upon him, especially this whole bomb situation, because it's like, oh, she got someone else, like, it, because obviously people are looking into it, but so far it looks like, well, crap just happens. At least that's what Gideon was saying. But obviously, like I said, Gideon knows there's more to this, especially because of the way Ada's acting and everything. So if it gets trailed back to this hacker, and then they find out there's connection to her, and especially the whole connection to that whole family situation, it could look very badly upon the task force, especially because Murphy makes it sound like, because she explains the whole situation to Gideon, that's like, yeah, this is actually a lot more personal than you think. Essentially, Scott's coming after, because Scott and her got together because they're both cops and everything, and it seemed like it was a good situation. But she soon realized that, like, Scott only wants this whole thing to work out because it's like, to him, it's almost like a pissing contest that he just wants to prove he's better or some shape or form. Obviously, like, he thinks there's a little something there. Obviously, last episode brought up the fact that he thinks there's a little something between Murphy and Gideon when there's not, which obviously you've seen there might be something there, but it hasn't crossed any unprofessional boundaries. It's been 100% professional and everything. Even to the point Gideon's like, maybe you should get a different task, be in a, different district or something, get that transfer or whatever. I mean, maybe that would probably help them in the long run, because like Scott would less likely be involved. He's like, well, he'd probably be more likely because he is a cop and everything, and he probably looked at what Gideon is doing. It's like, oh, you're just some rich douche trying to flaunt your money around and everything. So it's like, it's kind of coincides with the bad guys in this episode, because the reason why they hit up that shop and everything, it's like they look at Gideon, it's like, yo, we get paid $10 an hour, yet you have this billionaire douchebag like buying a police station and stuff like that. It's like, yo, we're just trying to get ours. In which Murphy had to be like, yeah, but you killed an innocent man. All he did was care for people, do good for other people, and so you killed an innocent man who had nothing to do with some situation like that. So it's like, just because you felt like you deserved something more, you decided to take a person's life. It's like, screw you, But it's kind of a situation, because the way Murphy kind of talks about it, it's like her hubby, well, Scott, only wants her around because it's like she's arm candy, because it's like it looks better to the higher ups, I guess, if he has a police wife. It's like, oh, here's a good police family and they're very good at their jobs type of situation, and so he can rise through the ranks. So, but other than that, she doesn't really matter. She's like, even the fact is that calls and texts about, oh, how he can't be there. The fact is, kind of an absentee dad, wasn't always there, always working. And even though she's working, she's always doing her best to be there for her child. So obviously we're kind of going back to the whole situation while she's living with her mom right now with her kid, obviously bouncing back and forth. Whether it's 100% set in stone situation, like they're going through a divorce, or they are 100, like whether they're separated right now or whether they're 100% divorced, we'll have to wait and see. But the way she makes it, like, I might have misinterpreted, but it seemed like she was kind of referencing the fact that Scott kind of cheated on her. The fact that she kind of had to sit through all these different calls and stuff from other women and other texts, and she just kind of had enough of it. So it does seem like it's more like it's a situation of just from a professional level. Like, I think I brought it up last episode. He just doesn't like Gideon more so than anything. This is also the mayor's tactic too, because it's like Gideon is kind of humiliating him, because it's like Gideon is taking the district and taking Chicago in a direction that he wasn't able to, so it makes him look back. It's like, oh, this guy came in here, he kind of outdid you at your own job, so it's making him look bad. So more so than anything, he wants to destroy Gideon. Hence why I brought up, like, for the past 2 episodes, the pilot episode as well as last week's episode, that basically it seems like the mayor's definitely going to be like the main antagonist of this whole season at the very least. But it seems like Scott's easily working his way there. I caught a glimpse on the next episode. It looks like Scott's probably going to be a prominent part of it too, trying to come after Gideon. So like I said, everything that happened in this episode is definitely going to come back in some shape or form, because it's like, it's going to be like an IA type of situation where it's like they're going to investigate them, turn over every rock in every corner. Every illegal thing they've ever done is probably going to be used against them. Hence this whole Ada situation. The moment everything was unfolding, I'm like, it's going to backlash. And even if it's not just, even with this whole task force situation, she still owes that dude 2 favors, and who's to say it won't end up being something bad. Maybe that certain things he'll ask her will get the task force attention and eventually lead to them getting in trouble. I don't know. Overall, very good episode, and it seems like it's definitely setting up some very interesting things going forward. So I'm very curious to see what happens to that, like, situation, that family situation, the mom, dad, and father. I wondered, was he 100% arrested, or did the wife kind of talk him? I mean, it doesn't matter because he still hit her and that turned into a thing. So I doubt Ada's going to drop the charges, but who's to say, like, someone else might not get in the way of that? Like, I want to see what it means going forward for that little boy and his family, because, like, maybe Ada, I mean, obviously she didn't go about things the right way, but she went about things the only way she could. Like, yes, in a sense, it's kind of like vigilante justice at the same, but it's at the same time, it's like, she saw a situation, she has access to this information. It's like, she's very smart, and she knows, based on her own experiences, like, she knows, like, this type of situation doesn't end well. So it's like, it's a rock and a hard place of, like, whether you do, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And damned if you don't won't just apply to her. It means also that family would be screwed over, that wife and child. So very good episode. Very interested to see where we go from here next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.